I stared at the credit report in my hands, my vision blurring as tears threatened to spill over. The numbers seemed to swim before my eyes, but the truth was undeniable. There it was, in black and white, a $75,000 personal loan taken out 6 months ago, in my name. A loan I had never applied for, never signed for, and never knew existed until this moment. There must be some mistake, I whispered to myself, though I already knew there wasn't. The timing aligned perfectly with Marcus's business venture, the one he'd been so secretive about, the one that had supposedly been funded by a private investor he'd met through his network. My hands trembled as I set down the report on my pristine white desk, the one I'd bought with my own hard-earned money from my job as a financial advisor. Oh, the irony wasn't lost on me. I helped people protect and grow their wealth every day. Yet here I was, victim to the oldest trick in the book, betrayed by someone I trusted with my life, my future, and apparently, my identity. The afternoon. Sun streamed through my home office window, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Everything looked exactly the same as it had this morning when I'd casually decided to check my credit report, a routine task I performed for clients. Daily. Yet nothing would ever be the same again. My phone buzzed, Marcus's smiling face lighting up the screen. "Hey babe, don't forget we're meeting the wedding planner at 6. She wants to finalize the flower arrangements." His voice was cheerful, casual, as if he hadn't committed a crime that could land him in prison. "Of course," I replied, proud of how steady I kept my voice. Wouldn't miss it. Years of handling delicate client situations had taught me the value of composure. Right now, that training was worth its weight in gold. As I ended the call, my eyes drifted to the engagement ring on my left hand, a 2-carat diamond in a platinum setting that Marcus had insisted on, despite my protests that it was too extravagant. Now I knew why he could afford it. He couldn't. I was the one who had unknowingly paid for it. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. How many other things in our life together had been funded by this loan? The down payment on his new car? The successful investments he'd been bragging about to our friends? The lavish vacation he'd surprised me with for our engagement anniversary? My laptop chimed with an incoming email, another credit card offer. They'd been increasing lately, no doubt due to the hard inquiry from the loan application. A loan application that bore my forged signature, used my social security number, and was now destroying my perfect credit score month by month. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the manila folder where I kept all our wedding plans. The venue deposit, the catering contract, the honeymoon reservations, all scheduled for 3 months from now. All carefully chosen and meticulously organized, just like everything else in my life had been before this moment. The wedding planner had called it a fairy tale romance just last week. Marcus, the charming entrepreneur who swept me off my feet 2 years ago, and me, the successful financial advisor who seemed to have it all figured out. If only she knew the dark truth lurking beneath our picture-perfect surface. My eyes fell on the family photo sitting on my desk, my parents smiling proudly at my graduation from business school. They had taught me the value of financial independence, the importance of integrity in all dealings. Money and love don't mix well unless there's complete trust, my father always said. How right he had been. The sun dipped lower in the sky as I sat there, my mind racing through possibilities, scenarios, and consequences. I wasn't just angry, I was calculating. Years of financial planning had taught me that every problem had a solution if you approached it strategically. Marcus had played a dangerous game, thinking he could outsmart a financial advisor. He was about to learn just how dangerous that game could be. I reached for my phone again, this time to make a different call. "Sarah, it's me. Remember that favor? You owe me? I need access to everything you have on loan fraud investigations. And Sarah? This needs to stay completely confidential." As I ended the call, I felt an odd sense of calm settle over me. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something far more potent: determination. Marcus had no idea what he'd done. He hadn't just taken out a fraudulent loan. He'd awakened a side of me he never knew existed. The side that didn't just understand money, the side that could make it talk. The wedding planner would be expecting us in 2 hours. I had that long to begin putting my plan into motion. After all, every good financial strategy required careful timing and precise execution. And if there was one thing I knew better than love, it was money. The wedding planner's office was exactly what you'd expect. All soft pastels and fresh flowers, with wedding magazines artfully arranged on every surface. I sat beside Marcus, watching him charm our planner, Jessica, with stories about how we met. His hand rested casually on my knee, a gesture that used to make my heart flutter. Now it took everything in me not to flinch. And for the ceremony flowers, I was thinking white roses and peonies, Jessica suggested, flipping through her portfolio. They'll complement the venue's architecture beautifully. I smiled and nodded, my mind far from flower arrangements. Sarah had already sent me the preliminary information I'd requested. According to her research, identity theft by romantic partners was more common than most people realized. The average victim lost $23,000. Marcus had taken more than 3 times that amount. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Marcus's voice cut through my thoughts. He was looking at me expectantly, that familiar crooked smile on his face, the same smile he'd worn when he told me about his successful business deals I now knew were probably fictional. "Whatever you think is best," I replied, playing my part perfectly. "You have such good taste." His chest puffed up at the compliment, and I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Men like Marcus thrived on ego stroking. It was partly what had made him such a successful con man. While Jessica detailed the reception timeline, I discreetly checked my phone. Sarah had sent another message. "Meeting set with Detective Torres tomorrow, 10 a.m. She specializes in financial crimes." "Oh, babe," Marcus suddenly said. "I almost forgot to tell you. Remember that investment I made last month? Well, it's already showing a 15% return." His eyes sparkled with manufactured excitement. We might be able to upgrade our honeymoon suite after all. I wondered which of my dollars he was talking about, the ones from the fraudulent loan or some other money he'd managed to siphon away. I made a mental note to check all our joint accounts again. If there was one thing I'd learned in my career, it was that financial deception rarely stopped at a single incident. "That's wonderful," I beamed, even as I typed a quick response to Sarah. "Need complete audit of all accounts connected to Marcus Evans, including business ventures from the past 2 years. Jessica launched into a discussion about wedding favors, but I was already plotting my next moves. Tomorrow's meeting with Detective Torres would be crucial. I needed to understand exactly what legal options I had, not just for recovering the money, but for ensuring Marcus faced consequences for his actions. "We should celebrate your investment success," I suggested as we left the planner's office, my voice honey-sweet. "Why don't you take me through the details over dinner? I'd love to understand more about your business ventures." Marcus's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly that anyone else might have missed it. But I caught it. It was the same micro-expression I'd seen countless times when clients tried to hide their financial mistakes from me. "Of course," he agreed, though I noticed how quickly he changed the subject. "But first, let's talk about the wedding. You seemed a bit distracted in there. Is everything okay?" I squeezed his hand reassuringly, marveling at how easy it was to deceive a deceiver. "Just overwhelmed with all the details. You know me, I like to have everything perfect." He laughed, pulling me close for a kiss. "That's my girl. Always the perfectionist. If he only knew how right he was." I was going to handle this situation perfectly, meticulously, methodically, and with maximum impact. Marcus thought he'd scored an easy payday by exploiting my trust. He was about to learn that he'd made the worst financial decision of his life. As we walked to our cars, I checked my calendar for tomorrow. Detective Torres at 10 a.m., lunch meeting with my bank's fraud department at noon, and at 3 p.m., an appointment. With the best forensic accountant in the city, the pieces were falling into place. "See you at home?" Marcus called out as he headed to his car, the one I was now certain had been bought with my stolen money. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, already looking forward to tonight's dinner interrogation. After all, every good financial investigation started with gathering information, and I intended to gather every scrap of evidence I could find. Detective Torres's office was stark and businesslike, a sharp contrast to the wedding planner's pastel paradise from yesterday. The detective herself matched her surroundings. No nonsense, with sharp eyes that seemed to catch every detail. "So, Ms. Chen," she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought, "you're telling me your fiancé managed to obtain a $75,000 loan in your name without your knowledge or consent?" Her tone was professional, but I caught the slight raise of her eyebrow. "Yes," I replied, pulling out my own carefully organized file. "And I've brought everything to prove it. Here's the original loan documentation, my credit report showing, the hard inquiry, and bank statements showing the money's movement." The detective leafed through my evidence, nodding appreciatively at my thoroughness. "Most victims don't come this prepared," she noted. But then again, most victims aren't financial advisors. I watched as she examined the loan application, paying particular attention to the forged signature. Marcus knew all my personal information, social security number, mother's maiden name, everything. We were planning a life together. I never imagined he'd use that information to steal from me. Unfortunately, romantic partner fraud is more common than you'd think, Torres said, echoing Sarah's earlier information. The trust makes it easy for the perpetrator and devastating for the victim. "I'm not planning to be a victim for long," I stated firmly, pulling out another document. "I've already spoken with my bank's fraud department. They've flagged the loan and are launching their own investigation." Torres smiled slightly, clearly approving of my proactive approach. "Have you confronted Mr. Evans about this?" "Not yet," I answered, thinking of last night's dinner. I'd let Marcus ramble about his supposed investment successes, carefully noting every detail of his lies. I wanted to understand my legal options first. "Smart," Torres nodded. "The moment you confront him, he'll likely try to cover his tracks. Speaking of which," she paused, pulling out a form, "we should discuss your options for pressing charges." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. What kind of penalties could he face? Identity theft and loan fraud are serious crimes. Given the amount involved, he could be looking at significant fines and possible jail time. She watched my reaction carefully. "Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Marcus's easy smile, his casual lies, the way he'd violated my trust without a second thought. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "I want him held accountable." Torres made some notes in her file. "We'll need to build a solid case. Bank records, witness statements, evidence of his access to your personal information. The stronger the paper trail, the better." "I have a meeting with a forensic accountant this afternoon," I told her. "I suspect the loan might just be the tip of the iceberg." "Good instinct," Torres agreed. "Financial crimes rarely exist in isolation. While we build the criminal case, you should also consider civil action to recover your money." I pulled out my phone, showing her Sarah's latest message. "Already on it. I've got a consultation with a civil litigation attorney tomorrow." The detective sat back, studying me with newfound respect. "Ms. Chen, I've handled hundreds of fraud cases. Most victims are overwhelmed, emotional, unable to think clearly. You're different. I've spent my career helping people protect their financial futures," I explained, gathering my documents. "Marcus didn't just steal money from me. He violated everything I stand for professionally and personally. He's about to learn that was a very expensive mistake." As I stood to leave, Torres handed me her card. Call me immediately if he becomes suspicious or tries to leave town. And Ms. Chen? I turned back. Be careful. When fraudsters realize they've been caught, they can become desperate. I nodded, thinking of the security cameras I'd already installed in my home office. Don't worry, detective. I plan for every contingency. It's what I do. Walking to my car, I checked my phone again. The forensic accountant had sent a preliminary questionnaire about Marcus's known assets and business dealings. My bank's fraud department needed additional documentation. And Sarah had texted about finding some interesting inconsistencies in Marcus's business registration papers. I smiled, sliding behind the wheel. While Marcus was probably at his office, bragging about his latest fictional business success, his carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down. The only question was, would he feel the first tremors before the whole thing collapsed? The forensic accountant's office smelled of coffee and printer toner. Robert Kane, a man who looked like he could find a needle in a haystack of tax returns, spread the documents across his desk with methodical precision. Your fiancé has been busy, he remarked, pointing to a complex web of transactions he'd mapped out. The loan was just the beginning. Look at these transfers. I leaned forward, watching as he traced the money's path through various accounts. The $75,000 had been split into smaller amounts, bouncing between different banks before landing in what appeared to be business accounts. Classic money laundering technique, Kane explained, pulling up more records. But he got sloppy. See these timestamps? He made rookie mistakes in his rush to move the money. My throat tightened as I recognized some of the account numbers. Those are our joint accounts, the ones we opened for wedding expenses. Kane nodded grimly. He used them as pass-through accounts. Probably thought the wedding planning would explain any unusual activity. But here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out another sheet. These business accounts? They're all registered to shell companies. Shell companies? My heart raced as pieces started falling into place. All those networking events Marcus claimed to attend, the mysterious business partners he never introduced me to. It was all a facade. 5 of them, established over the last year. Each one supposedly involved in investment consulting. Kane's air quotes spoke volumes. But there's no evidence of actual business activity. They're just empty vessels for moving money. I thought about all the times Marcus had bragged about his growing business empire. What about his supposed investment returns, the ones he's been showing me? Kane's expression turned sympathetic. Fabricated. He created fake statements using templates, good ones but fake. The profits he's been claiming, they don't exist. My hands clenched into fists under the desk. Every anniversary dinner, every expensive gift, every grand gesture, all of it had been funded with stolen money. My stolen money. There's more, Kane continued, pulling up digital records. I found evidence of earlier fraud attempts. Small. Loans, credit card applications, all using others' information. You weren't his first target, Ms. Chen. Just his biggest. The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just opportunistic theft. It was a pattern. A calculated scheme he'd perfected over time. I need copies of everything, I said, my voice steady despite my churning stomach. Detective Torres will want to see this. Already preparing the full report, Kane assured me. But there's something else you should see. He hesitated, then pulled out one final document. I found this buried in the registration papers for his primary shell company. I stared at the page, my vision blurring slightly. It was a marriage license application, dated 3 years ago. Marcus's name was there, along with another woman's. He was married before, I whispered, though the evidence was right in front of me. Divorced 2 years ago, Kane confirmed. Right before he met you. And look at the financial settlements. The numbers told a story that made my blood run cold. His ex-wife had claimed financial fraud then, too, but had settled quietly out of court. The settlement amount? Just under $50,000. He's done this before, I realized, anger replacing shock. The marriage, the fraud, all of it. It's a pattern. Kane nodded solemnly. You're not just dealing with loan fraud, Ms. Chen. This is a sophisticated financial predator who uses marriage as his hunting ground. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Picked up your favorite wine for dinner tonight. Love you. I stared at the message, seeing it for what it really was. Another move in his elaborate con game. But this time, he'd chosen the wrong mark. I'll need your complete findings as soon as possible, I told Kane, standing up. And I want to know everything about that divorce settlement. As I left his office, my mind was already racing ahead. Marcus thought he was clever, using romance to hide his schemes. But he'd made a fatal error in targeting me. Because while he was playing with stolen money, I had spent my career learning how to follow it, and I was about to show him exactly how expensive karma could be. The wine Marcus had bought was indeed my favorite, an expensive Bordeaux we'd discovered during our trip to France last year. A trip that I now realized had probably been funded with stolen money. My money. I watched him pour it into crystal, glasses, playing the role of the perfect fiancé while my laptop quietly recorded our conversation from my partially open bag. To us, he smiled, raising his glass. And to another successful investment. His eyes sparkled with manufactured joy, a look I once found charming, but now saw as predatory. I clinked my glass against his, taking a small sip while maintaining my facade of adoring fiancé. Tell me more about this investment, I encouraged, setting the perfect trap. I'd love to understand how you're achieving such amazing returns. Marcus launched into an elaborate explanation, weaving technical terms with confident assurances. To an amateur, it might have sounded impressive. To a financial advisor, it was nonsense. A word salad of investing jargon that revealed his complete lack of actual market knowledge. The diversification strategy really paid off, he continued, reaching for the bottle. We're looking at a 20% return in just 3 months. I nodded encouragingly, mentally cataloging each lie. That's incredible. Which sectors are performing best? Tech, mainly, he replied without hesitation. Some emerging markets. The portfolio is highly diversified. He was getting cocky now, emboldened by my apparent interest. I'd love to see the portfolio breakdown, I suggested innocently. Maybe I could learn something for my clients. A flicker of panic crossed his face before his smooth mask slipped back into place. It's all tied up in private placements, very exclusive. The documentation is complicated. I'm sure I could understand it, I pressed gently. After all, it's what I do for a living. Marcus smoothly changed the subject, launching into a story about a fictional meeting with investors. I let him talk, remembering Kane's revelations about the shell companies. Every word out of his mouth now was potential evidence. Oh, by the way, he said, getting up to fetch our dinner from the oven. I was thinking we should merge our accounts after the wedding. It would make managing our finances so much easier. My hand tightened around the wine glass. The audacity was breathtaking. He was already planning his next move, trying to gain even more access to my assets. That's a big step, I replied carefully. I'd want to understand exactly how our money would be managed. Don't you trust me? He asked, his voice carrying a hint of wounded pride. We're getting married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours? He trailed off with a smile that made my skin crawl. Of course I trust you. I lied, thinking of the recording device in my bag. I just like to be thorough, professional habit. Dinner progressed with the same pattern. Marcus spinning tales of business success while I gathered evidence with every carefully crafted question. As he cleared our plates, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Found his ex-wife. She's willing to talk. Everything okay? Marcus asked, noticing my expression. Just work. I smiled, sliding the phone away. You know how clients can be. He nodded sympathetically, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. You work too hard. Maybe after the wedding you could scale back a bit. My business is doing so well, you wouldn't need to. We'll see. I cut him off, fighting to keep the anger from my voice. This was his end game, getting me to step away from my career, making me financially dependent on him. Classic predator behavior. Later, as he left for his apartment, he kissed me tenderly. I love you, he whispered. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. I watched him drive away, thinking of the evidence building in my files, the recording in my bag, and tomorrow's meeting with his ex-wife. The rest of your life might be shorter than you think, I murmured, closing the door. The game was entering a new phase, and Marcus had no idea he was playing against a master strategist who had already mapped out his downfall, down to the last detail. Rachel Davidson, formerly Rachel Evans, chose a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town for our meeting. I spotted her immediately, elegant, poised, and carrying the same haunted look I'd seen in my own mirror lately. She was nursing a cup of coffee, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of the mug. I should have spoken up sooner, she said after I introduced myself. When I saw your engagement announcement in the business section, I almost reached out, but the terms of my settlement include a non-disclosure agreement, I finished for her, pulling out a copy of the document Kane had found. Her eyes widened. You've done your homework, she noted, a hint of admiration in her voice. Then again, Marcus always did have a type. Successful, smart women with something to lose. I placed my recorder on the table between us. The NDA doesn't prevent you from cooperating with a criminal investigation. Detective Torres has already confirmed that. Rachel's shoulders relaxed slightly. What do you want to know? Everything, I replied, pulling out my notebook. Start with how you met him. For the next hour, Rachel painted a familiar picture. The whirlwind romance, the careful cultivation of trust, the gradual isolation from friends who raised concerns, the mysterious business ventures that always needed just a little more capital. He used my professional contacts, she explained, her voice bitter. Turned my network into his personal hunting ground. By the time I discovered the loans he'd taken out in my name, he'd already drained my savings and retirement accounts. How? Did you catch him? I asked, though Kane's investigation had revealed most of it. Pure luck. A bank statement delivered to my office instead of our home. He'd gotten sloppy, thought I was too trusting to check. She laughed humorlessly. The divorce papers were filed the next day. But you settled quietly, I probed. Why? Rachel's face darkened. He had dirt on me. Professional indiscretions he'd carefully documented. Nothing illegal, but enough to damage my career. The $50,000 settlement was cheaper than fighting him. I nodded, thinking of the meticulous evidence I'd been gathering. He didn't expect you to find forensic accountants, though, did he? No. She smiled for the first time. That caught him off guard, but by then the money was gone. Laundered through his shell companies, just like he's probably doing with yours. Not exactly, I corrected her, sliding across a document showing my latest findings. I've been tracking every penny, and unlike last time, he's left a clear paper trail. Rachel studied the document, her professional training as a corporate lawyer kicking in. This is impressive. You've got everything. Bank transfers, shell company registrations, forged documents. How did you get all this? Let's just say Marcus isn't the only one who knows how to play a long game, I replied. The question is, are you willing to testify? She hesitated, years of fear visible in her expression. He'll try to destroy me. He's got files, photos. Not anymore, I assured her, pulling out another document. Sarah, my friend in digital security, found his cloud storage. We've already scrubbed anything he could use against you." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. I thought I was smart, successful. How did I let him fool me so completely? Because he's a predator who specifically targets strong, successful women, I reminded her. He counts on shame keeping us quiet, but not this time. Rachel straightened, in her chair, professional resolve replacing vulnerability. "What do you need from me?" "Everything you have on his previous schemes. Names of other victims. I know there were more before you. And your testimony when the time comes." "When do you plan to confront him?" she asked. "Soon," I replied, checking my phone as a text from Detective Torres came in. "Very soon, but first I need to finish setting the stage." As we wrapped up our meeting, Rachel grabbed my arm. "Be careful. When Marcus realizes he's caught, he becomes unpredictable. During our divorce, my car brakes mysteriously failed. The police couldn't prove anything, but..." I patted her hand reassuringly. "Don't worry. I've planned for every contingency. Marcus thinks he's destroying my life, but he's really sealing his own fate." Walking back to my car, I called Sarah. "Get me everything you can on brake tampering incidents during Rachel's divorce. And Sarah, double-check those new security cameras at my house. Something tells me we're going to need them." Detective Torres's evidence board had grown impressively over the past week. Photos, financial records, and connection maps covered nearly an entire wall of her office. My careful documentation combined with Rachel's testimony had painted a damning picture of Marcus's criminal enterprise. "We've identified 3 more victims," Torres announced, pinning up new photographs. "All successful professional women, all romantically involved with Marcus between his divorce and meeting you, all reporting unauthorized loans and missing funds. I studied the faces of these women, a surgeon, a real estate developer, and a tech executive. Each had lost between $20,000 and $40,000. Each had been too embarrassed or afraid to press charges. But none of them went as far as marriage," I noted, seeing the pattern. "He was perfecting his technique, building up to bigger targets." "Exactly," Torres agreed. "The engagement seems to be his sweet spot. It gives him access to personal information while maintaining an escape route." She pointed to a timeline she'd constructed. "See how he always ends things just before the wedding? Claims business troubles, cold feet, or finds some way to make it the woman's fault." Sarah burst into the office, laptop in hand. "You need to see this," she announced, pulling up financial records. "Marcus just tried to access your investment accounts. He used the password reset function with your mother's maiden name." My pulse quickened. He's getting nervous. "The shell companies must be running dry." "That's not all," Sarah continued. "He's been researching one-way flights to countries without extradition treaties. Multiple searches in the past 24 hours. Torres immediately picked up her phone. "I'll get a travel alert placed on his passport. We can't risk him fleeing before we're ready to move." "Has he found the surveillance?" I asked Sarah, thinking of the cameras we'd installed. "No, but he's been snooping through your home office. When you're out. The cameras caught him trying to access your computer yesterday." Sarah pulled up the footage, showing Marcus frantically typing at my desk. "Good thing we anticipated that." I smiled grimly. The computer had been carefully prepared with fake files suggesting financial troubles, breadcrumbs leading him exactly where I wanted him to go. "There's something else," Torres interjected, hanging up her phone. "The forensic team found irregularities in his previous business records. It seems the loan fraud might be just the tip of the iceberg. We're looking at potential tax evasion, wire fraud, and possibly even securities violations." I thought about all his bragging about investment returns, all those fictional business deals. He's been selling investments that don't exist, hasn't he? "It appears so," Torres confirmed, "using his shell companies to run a mini Ponzi scheme. The money from your loan was probably used to pay returns to other investors." Sarah's laptop pinged with a new alert. "He's making moves," she reported. Just tried to transfer funds from one of his shell companies to an offshore account. Let it go through, I instructed, seeing Torres's questioning look. We want him to think he still has an escape route. How long until the warrants are ready? 24 hours, Torres replied. We're coordinating with financial crimes and the SEC. When we move, we want to hit everything simultaneously. His home, office, and all known storage locations. I checked my phone as it buzzed with a text from Marcus. Need to postpone dinner tonight, baby. Emergency business meeting. Love you. He's meeting with Jack tonight, Sarah revealed, checking her surveillance. His so-called business partner who's actually helping him move money offshore. Perfect, I said, a plan crystallizing. Have the recording devices in place at their usual restaurant. And make sure our friend at the SEC gets their usual table. Torres raised an eyebrow. You planted someone at the restaurant? Marcus is predictable, I explained. Every emergency business meeting happens at the same high-end steakhouse. The SEC investigator will just happen to be having dinner at tea. The next table? You really don't leave anything to chance, do you? Torres marveled. When you're dealing with a financial predator, I replied, gathering my things, you have to think like one. Marcus believes he's the smartest person in the room. That's his weakness. As I left the police station, another text came through. Missing you already? Can't wait for our wedding day. I smiled at his message, thinking of the handcuffs that would soon replace those wedding rings. Marcus had no idea that his perfect con was about to become his perfect downfall. The hidden camera feed from the steakhouse played on my laptop in crisp high definition. Marcus sat at his usual table with Jack, both men hunched over their drinks, their faces tense. The SEC investigator, posing as a business dinner guest at the adjacent table, adjusted his tie, the signal that the recording equipment was working perfectly. It's falling apart, Marcus hissed, his usual smooth demeanor cracking. The offshore transfers are being flagged. Someone's watching our accounts. Jack dabbed his forehead with a napkin. Maybe we should shut everything down. Close the shell. Companies disappear for a while. And leave millions on the table? Marcus scoffed, taking a long drink. My fiancé's investment portfolio alone is worth more than everything we've pulled so far. Once we're married... If you make it to the wedding, Jack interrupted. Have you seen the way she's been asking about the business lately? The detailed questions about investments? I smiled, watching Marcus dismiss his partner's concerns with a wave. She suspects nothing. Trust me, I know how to handle her type. Smart women are actually easier to con. They overthink everything, look for complex explanations when the truth is right in front of them. The SEC investigator shifted slightly, ensuring his recording device captured every word. Marcus was hanging himself with his own arrogance. What about Rachel? Jack pressed. I heard she's been asking around about us. Marcus's face darkened. Rachel won't be a problem. The NDA in her settlement is ironclad. Besides, no one would believe her. I made sure her credibility was thoroughly destroyed during the divorce. Sarah's voice came through my earpiece. Detective Torres is documenting everything. These threats against Rachel will help support her testimony. On screen, Marcus pulled out his phone, pulling up what appeared to be my investment account login. Paige, look at this. Once we're married, I'll have full access. We're talking premium municipal bonds, blue-chip stocks, real estate holdings, all perfectly liquid. And what happens when she discovers what you've done with the loan? Jack asked. Marcus laughed, the sound sending chills down my spine. By then, it'll be too late. I've already laid the groundwork. If she causes trouble, evidence will surface showing she was involved in everything. Every fraudulent document, every illegal transfer, her fingerprints are all over them. I watched him pull out a folder, showing Jack what appeared to be documents bearing my signature. The forgeries we'd already documented and reported to the FBI. Torres says we've got enough, Sarah whispered in my ear. Want me to shut it down? Not yet, I replied softly. Let's see how deep he'll dig his grave. On screen, Marcus and Jack moved on to discussing specific plans for transferring my assets post-wedding. Each word was another nail in their coffin, every detail meticulously recorded by both the SEC investigator and our own devices. "What about the wedding planner?" Jack asked. "She's been asking for the next payment." "I'll handle it," Marcus assured him. "A few more transfers from the shell companies, maybe another small loan. By the time anyone notices, we'll be gone. New names, new identities, new hunting grounds." My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Torres. "FBI Financial Crimes Unit. Wants to move tomorrow. How close are you to being ready?" I thought about the elaborate trap we'd set, all the evidence we'd gathered. "Tell them to wait," I texted back. "I want him to make one more big mistake." On my laptop, Marcus and Jack were wrapping up their meeting. "Don't lose your nerve," Marcus warned his partner. 2 more weeks until the wedding. Then we pull off the biggest score of our careers." As they stood to leave, Marcus paused, glancing around the restaurant with sudden suspicion. For a moment, his eyes lingered on the SEC investigator, who was completely absorbed in his apparent business dinner. "Relax," I whispered, though he couldn't hear me. "Your perfect Mark is still perfectly clueless. For now." Sarah's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Rachel just sent over the last piece of evidence we needed. Her old lawyer found the original documents, showing Marcus's pattern of identity theft." I closed my laptop, the final pieces of my plan falling into place. "Good," I replied, "because tomorrow we're going to give Marcus exactly what he wants. Complete access to my financial records. Let's see what he does when he thinks he's won. After all, the best trap is the one your prey walks into willingly, believing it's their own brilliant idea." The morning sun streamed through my home office windows as I deliberately left my computer unlocked, a carefully crafted document displayed on the screen. The file, titled Investment Portfolio, Complete Holdings, was pure catnip for someone like Marcus. Sarah had helped me prepare it perfectly, real enough to fool initial scrutiny, but tagged with invisible markers to trace any access or copying. "Surveillance is active," Sarah confirmed through my phone. "All cameras online, keyloggers in place. If he touches that computer, we'll know exactly what he does." I grabbed my keys, making sure to move noisily enough that Marcus, who had, surprisingly, dropped by for breakfast, would hear me preparing to leave. Right on cue, he appeared in the doorway. "Heading to the office already, babe?" he asked, coffee cup in hand. "It's Saturday." "Emergency client meeting," I explained, kissing his cheek. "Some concerns about market volatility. Might take a few hours." His eyes flickered almost imperceptibly toward my computer. "Want me to wait? We could do lunch after." "No need," I smiled, carefully adjusting my screen so the document title was just visible. "I might be a while. Why don't you head home? I'll call you later." As I drove away, Sarah's voice came through my earpiece. "He waited exactly 3 minutes after you left before going into your office. He's at your computer now." I pulled into a nearby parking lot, opening my laptop to watch the feed. Marcus was already downloading files, his expression growing more excited with each discovery. The portfolio document had been designed to hint at hidden accounts, leading him down a carefully constructed trail of breadcrumbs. "He's accessing the false offshore account records," Sarah reported, "complete with those routing numbers we planted. Detective Torres, are you getting this? Every keystroke," Torres confirmed on our secure line. "The FBI team is standing by. But remember, we need him to actually attempt a transfer for the charges to stick." I watched as Marcus pulled out his phone, presumably calling Jack. The directional microphones we'd installed picked up every word. "Jack, you won't believe what I just found. She's been hiding accounts. Big ones. We're talking 8 figures, all in offshore holdings. Get everything ready. We're accelerating the timeline." A notification popped up on my screen. Marcus was attempting to access one of the planted Swiss bank accounts using credentials he'd found in my personal notes folder. "He took the bait," Sarah announced. attempting to initiate a transfer of, oh my, $5 million. Ambitious. And completely illegal, Torres added. International wire fraud on top of everything else. Your digital trails are all tagged. And traceable? Every single one, Sarah confirmed. The moment he hits transfer, the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit will have everything they need. On my screen, Marcus was practically giddy, typing furiously as he attempted to route my supposed millions through his network of shell companies. Each keystroke dug his hole deeper, every attempt at concealment adding to the evidence against him. Activity on his phone, Sarah reported. He's texting his real estate contact in the Caymans. Looks like he's ready to run. I smiled grimly. Let me guess. Booking that beachfront property he kept talking about for our honeymoon? Actually, it's a compound with private security. Guess he was planning a different kind of getaway all along. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Miss you already. Can't wait to start our life together. He's covering his tracks, Torres observed. Making sure you don't suspect anything before he can complete the transfers. I watched as Marcus carefully closed all the files, returning my computer to exactly how he'd found it. Ever the meticulous con man, he even adjusted my chair to its original position before leaving my office. Should we move in? Torres asked. We have more than enough. Not yet, I replied, thinking of Rachel and all his other victims. Let him think he's won. I want him to feel the same false security he gave all those women before he destroyed their lives. Sarah's voice carried a note of admiration. The accounts he's trying to access, when he realizes they're honeypots? He'll panic, I finished, and when he does, every move he makes will only tighten the noose. Set up alerts for any unusual activity. The moment he tries to access those accounts again, we'll know, Sarah confirmed. Your trap is ready. Now we just wait for him to spring it. I started my car, heading to my actual client meeting. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Marcus thought he'd just discovered the score of a lifetime. Instead, he'd walked right into a carefully baited cage, one that was about to slam shut with him inside. The first sign that Marcus was unraveling came at 3 a.m., when my security system alerted me to movement in my home office. Through the cameras, I watched him frantically trying to initiate transfers from the fake offshore accounts, his composure cracking with each failed attempt. All his transactions are being blocked, Sarah confirmed via text. The honeypot accounts are working perfectly. Each attempt is being logged and traced directly back to him. I watched as he ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd never seen from the usually polished con man. On his screen, error messages flashed one after another. Transfer denied. Authentication failed. Please contact your financial institution. My phone lit up with his call. I let it ring, imagining his growing panic. A text followed immediately. Baby, are you awake? Need to talk about wedding finances. Urgent. He's spiraling, Detective Torres noted on our secure line. His earlier attempts to access the Cayman Islands property failed too. All his escape routes are closing simultaneously. I pulled up the surveillance feeds from Marcus's apartment, where we'd legally placed cameras in the public areas. Jack had arrived, looking as panicked as Marcus had been in my office. The accounts are frozen, Marcus was saying, pacing his living room. All of them. Something's wrong. And Rachel, I saw her yesterday, talking to someone outside my gym. I think she's working with the feds. We need to run, Jack insisted, clutching a laptop. The shell companies are being flagged. I can't move any more money without triggering alerts. Sarah's voice came through my earpiece. Their entire network is collapsing. The SEC's algorithms are flagging every account they touch. Should we move in? Not yet, I replied, watching Marcus become increasingly agitated. Let them incriminate themselves further. On screen, Marcus was pulling out stacks of documents, copies of the forged loan applications, fake investment statements, and identity theft materials. We need to destroy everything, he was saying. Wipe the computers, burn the papers. Already documented, Torres confirmed. We have copies of everything he's trying to destroy. Each attempt at concealment just adds obstruction of justice to his charges. My phone buzzed again, Marcus switching tactics. Found some irregularities in our wedding budget. Getting worried about our financial future. Can we meet? He's trying to set you up, Sarah observed. Probably planning to plant evidence making, "You look complicit," I finally responded to his text. "Of course, honey. Over breakfast, I'll make your favorite." Through the surveillance feed, I watched his face as he read my reply. For a moment, his mask slipped back into place, the charming fiancé ready to play his role. But underneath, I could see the desperation in his eyes. "Track his movements," I instructed Sarah. "The moment he leaves his apartment, I want to know exactly where he goes." "He's accessing your fake personal email account," Sarah reported moments later. "Finding those accidentally archived messages about the offshore accounts. He's forwarding them to himself, trying to create a paper trail suggesting you were involved." I smiled grimly. "Perfect. Every email has hidden metadata tags. He's literally documenting his own criminal activity." Torres's voice carried a note of concern. "Be careful with tomorrow's meeting. When cornered, suspects like this can become dangerous." "Already handled," I assured her. "The breakfast venue has been secured, every exit covered, and Sarah's team will be monitoring all communications." On my screen, Marcus was making more phone calls, each one more desperate than the last. Banks, lawyers, even his contacts in the Caymans, all carefully monitored, every word documented. "The net is nearly complete," Sarah reported. "His last remaining shell company just got flagged for suspicious activity. By morning, he'll have no access to any of the fraudulent funds." I watched him finally leave his apartment, Jack following shortly after with a briefcase full of documents. Both men looked over their shoulders repeatedly, already feeling the invisible walls closing in. "Get some rest," Torres advised. "Tomorrow's breakfast meeting will be intense. We'll be ready to move the moment you give the signal." I closed my laptop, but not before seeing one last text from Marcus. "Love you so much. Can't wait to see you in the morning." "I can't wait either," I whispered to my dark bedroom. By this time tomorrow, Marcus would finally understand exactly who he'd tried to con and what it was going to cost him. The upscale breakfast cafe buzzed with early morning activity, providing the perfect cover for the undercover agent strategically placed throughout. I'd chosen this venue carefully, public enough to keep Marcus in check, private enough for what was about to unfold. "Teams in position," Sarah confirmed through my nearly invisible earpiece. "Detective Torres has units on standby, SEC and FBI surveillance active." I checked my reflection in a window, adjusting my outfit. A cream-colored Chanel suit that radiated success and confidence. Today's performance needed to be flawless. Marcus wouldn't be the only one playing a role. He arrived exactly on time, looking immaculate as always, though the subtle shadows under his eyes betrayed his sleepless night. "There's my beautiful fiancé," he announced, leaning in to kiss my cheek. His cologne couldn't quite mask the scent of scotch. "You look tired, honey," I observed innocently. "Rough night?" "Just wedding jitters," he smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "And some business concerns. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss." The waitress, an undercover agent, took our orders. I watched Marcus's hands shake slightly as he lifted his coffee cup. The man who'd so confidently stolen from multiple women was finally starting to crack. "I've been thinking about our finances," he began carefully. "With the wedding coming up, maybe we should consolidate our accounts, make everything joint." "Funny you should mention that," I replied, pulling out a folder. "I've been doing some financial planning myself. Would you like to see?" His eyes lit up with poorly concealed greed. "Of course, baby. You know I always value your financial expertise." I opened the folder slowly, savoring the moment. It's fascinating what you find when you really dig into the numbers. Take this, for example. I slid across a document, a complete record of his fraudulent loan in my name. The color drained from his face. I don't understand. No? I pulled out another document. Maybe this will help. It's a fascinating statement from a shell company called Evans Global Enterprises. Seems they've been moving money through some very creative channels. Where did you get that? His whisper was barely audible. Or perhaps you'd prefer to discuss. This? I continued, laying out Rachel's divorce documents. It's quite a pattern, isn't it? The loans, the identity theft, the carefully orchestrated relationships. Marcus glanced toward the exit, but Sarah's voice in my ear confirmed what I already knew. All exits covered. He's trapped. You've been busy, I noted, continuing to lay out documents. Multiple shell companies, offshore accounts, forged signatures. Very impressive, though your attempt to access those Swiss accounts last night was a bit sloppy. You knew? His mask finally cracked completely. How long? Long enough to document everything. The loan, the money laundering, the attempted wire transfers, even your little chat with Jack about fleeing to the Caymans. His hand moved toward his pocket. If you think you can threaten me, I'm not threatening you, Marcus. I'm destroying you. I smiled, the same smile he'd used when bragging about his fictional business successes. Every account you've touched is frozen. Every transfer you've attempted has been logged. Every conversation you've had about your schemes has been recorded. He leaned forward, desperation replacing charm. We can work this out. I have money. My money, I corrected him. And Rachel's money. And the money of every other woman you've conned. But here's what you don't have anymore. Time. I stood up, smoothing my suit. The FBI is waiting outside. The SEC has enough evidence to bury you. And I have something even better. Documented proof of every crime you've committed since. The day you forged my signature on that loan application. You can't do this, he hissed, grabbing my wrist. I'll tell them you were involved. I have evidence. Your planted evidence? The emails with the hidden metadata tags? The forged documents we let you create? I pulled my arm free. Check your phone, Marcus. The game is over. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. Then another, and another. His face contorted as he read messages from every bank, lawyer, and contact he'd tried to reach last night, all confirming his worst fears. I picked up my purse, preparing for my exit. Oh, and Marcus? You should know. Rachel says hello. She's looking forward to testifying. As I walked away, I heard the FBI agents approaching his table. His final desperate call of wait was cut off by the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. Sometimes, I reflected, the best revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about making sure justice is served, with interest. Detective Torres's office had transformed into a command center, screens displaying the ongoing raids of Marcus's properties. FBI agents were simultaneously hitting his apartment, office, and 3 storage units. Every location yielded more evidence of his elaborate fraud scheme. They found a safe in his apartment, Torres reported, reviewing live updates. Full of forged documents, stolen identities, and USB drives. Your friend Sarah is already analyzing the data. I watched the screens, feeling oddly detached as Marcus's criminal empire crumbled. In one feed, agents were boxing up evidence from his home office. In another, his partner Jack was being led away in handcuffs, his facade of confidence completely shattered. The SEC team just found something interesting, Sarah announced, rushing in with a laptop. Remember those investment returns he kept bragging about? He was running a full-scale Ponzi scheme. We've identified at least 30 victims beyond the romance fraud cases. What's the total damage? I asked, though I already suspected the answer would be staggering. Preliminary estimates put it at over $3 million, Sarah replied. And that's just what we can trace so far. Some of the offshore accounts are still being untangled. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since Marcus's arrest, calls from the wedding planner, venue coordinators, confused friends. The story was already spreading through our social circle, though few knew the full extent of what had transpired. His lawyers trying to negotiate, Torres mentioned, hanging up. Her phone, offering full cooperation in exchange for leniency. Too late for that, I said firmly. We already have everything we need. Let him face the full consequences. Sarah pulled up another screen showing Marcus in interrogation. His designer suit was wrinkled, his polished appearance deteriorating by the minute. He was still trying to charm his way out, but his stories were falling apart under questioning. Rachel's testimony just finished, Torres added. She was absolutely brilliant. Between her documentation and yours, the prosecutor is confident this case is airtight. A notification popped up on Sarah's laptop. More victims coming forward. As news of Marcus's arrest spread, women across 3 states were finally speaking up about their experiences with him. We found his planning notebooks, an FBI agent reported via video link. He had detailed profiles on potential targets, all successful professional women. He was already researching his next victim before your wedding. I thought about how close he'd come to adding me to his list of victims. If I hadn't checked my credit report that day, if I hadn't had the resources and knowledge to fight back. The forensic accountants finished their preliminary review, Sarah announced, pulling up new documents. They found something interesting about that loan he took out in your name. He was using it as collateral for other fraudulent loans, leveraging fake assets to create a pyramid of debt. Classic white-collar criminal, Torres observed. Getting bolder with each success, taking bigger risks, convinced he'd never get caught. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Rachel. Just saw the news. Thank you for giving us all justice. Dinner soon? As I replied to Rachel, Torres received another update. The prosecutor's office is filing additional charges. Wire, fraud, securities fraud, identity theft, money laundering. He's looking at serious federal time. What about his assets? I asked, thinking of all the victims waiting for restitution. Frozen, Sarah confirmed. Everything we could trace has been seized. The forensic team is already working on liquidation plans for victim compensation. Through the interrogation room feed, I watched Marcus finally slump in his chair as reality set in. The facade was completely gone now, replaced by the true face of a man who'd built his life on deceiving others. One more thing, Torres added, a slight smile playing at her lips. Remember that Cayman Islands property he tried to book? Turns out he was using it as part of a larger money laundering operation. Interpol is very interested in his international connections. I gathered my things, ready to finally head home. The day had been exhausting, but thoroughly satisfying. Keep me updated on any new developments, I requested, especially regarding victim restitution. As I left the station, my phone lit up with a notification. The first news article about Marcus's arrest was going live. The headline read, International Finance Fraud Scheme Uncovered. Prominent businessman arrested. I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. Marcus had spent years perfecting his schemes, building his web of lies. Now he would spend years watching it all unravel, one charge at a time. The support group met in a warm, sunlit conference room at my office. 8 women, all successful professionals, all victims of Marcus's elaborate schemes. Rachel sat beside me, her lawyer's notepad ready to document their stories. Sarah monitored the security feeds, ensuring our privacy. I blamed myself for months, Jessica, a neurosurgeon, shared. I kept thinking that someone with my education should have seen through him, should have noticed the red flags. That's exactly what he counted on, Rachel explained. Our intelligence, our success. He used it against us, made us think we were too smart to be conned. I watched these accomplished women share their stories, each one echoing familiar patterns. The charming introduction, the whirlwind romance, the careful manipulation of trust. Marcus had refined his technique with each victim, learning from every success until he'd created an almost perfect scheme. The preliminary asset seizure report came in, Sarah announced during a break. They've recovered about 60%. Of the stolen funds so far, the forensic accountants are still tracking down offshore accounts. A notification lit up my phone. The prosecutor's office. Marcus's lawyer had made another attempt at a plea deal, offering to reveal the locations of additional hidden assets in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's still trying to manipulate the situation, Rachel observed, reading the message over my shoulder. Some things never change. But some things do, I replied, showing her another notification. The judge had denied Marcus's request for bail, citing flight risk and the international scope of his crimes. He would be spending the foreseeable future exactly where he belonged, behind bars. The support group reconvened, this time focusing on recovery and moving forward. These women weren't just victims, they were survivors, each one determined to reclaim their power and help prevent others from falling into similar traps. I'm establishing a foundation, I announced to the group, dedicated to educating professional women about financial fraud and providing resources for victims of romance scams. I'd like all of you to be part of it. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. These women, who'd been isolated and shamed by their experiences, were ready to transform their pain into purpose. The media's calling, Sarah mentioned after the meeting. They want interviews, exclusive stories. Marcus's case is gaining national attention. Good, Rachel declared. The more exposure, the more women we might save from going through what we did. My phone buzzed with an update from Detective Torres. The investigation had uncovered evidence of Marcus's crimes dating back over a decade. Earlier victims were coming forward, statute of limitations still intact thanks to his ongoing pattern of fraud. The SEC completed their analysis, Sarah reported, pulling up new documents. His Ponzi scheme was more extensive than we thought. They've identified victims in 12 states. I thought about the Marcus I'd known, or thought I'd known, the man who'd written me love notes and planned our future, the skillful predator who'd counted on shame and silence to protect him from consequences. His mother's requesting a meeting, Sarah added hesitantly. She claims she has information about other victims. Screen her carefully, I instructed. Marcus fooled a lot of people, but some knew exactly what he was doing. Rachel's law firm had already begun preparing civil suits on behalf of the victims. The evidence we'd gathered would help ensure that Marcus wouldn't just face criminal charges. He'd be financially responsible for the damage he'd caused. The Foundation's website is ready, Sarah announced, pulling up a preview. We've already received dozens of messages from women sharing similar stories. I reviewed the website's resources, warning signs of financial fraud, legal assistance, information, counseling services. Everything I wished I'd had access to when I first discovered Marcus's deception. A final email came through from the prosecutor's office. Marcus had stopped cooperating with investigators, reverting to his pattern of charm and manipulation. But this time, his tactics wouldn't work. The evidence was too strong, the documentation too thorough. He still doesn't get it, Rachel mused. He thinks he can talk his way out, just like always. Let him try, I replied, thinking of the years of prison time he faced. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. As the support group members left, each one standing taller than when they'd arrived, I felt a sense of completion. Marcus had thought he was destroying lives. Instead, he'd created a network of strong, resilient women determined to protect others from predators like him. 1 year later, I sat in the federal courthouse, watching Marcus stand for sentencing. His designer suits had been replaced by prison attire, his confident smirk erased by months in custody. The evidence we'd gathered had proven devastating. Every Charge stuck. Every defense strategy failed. In my years on the bench, the judge began, I've seen many financial crimes. But few have combined the calculated cruelty and systematic deception displayed in this case. Rachel squeezed my hand as we listened to the judge detail Marcus's crimes. Beside us sat other victims, each one present to witness justice being served. The prosecution had proven 23 separate counts of fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The defendant preyed upon successful, intelligent women, the judge continued. He didn't just steal their money. He violated their trust, damaged their sense of security, and attempted to shame them into silence. Marcus stared straight ahead, his mask of indifference finally cracking as the judge announced the sentence. 18 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 15 years. Full restitution ordered to all victims. A lifetime ban from working in financial services. How does it feel? Sarah whispered as Marcus was led away. Seeing him face consequences? I watched him disappear through the secure door, remembering the moment I'd discovered that loan in my name. It feels like protection, not just for us, but for every woman he might have targeted next. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered for statements. Our foundation had gained national attention, becoming a powerful resource for fraud prevention and victim support. Rachel, now our legal director, stepped forward to address the media. Today's sentence sends a clear message, she declared. Financial. Predators can no longer count on shame and silence to protect them. We're turning victims into advocates, isolation into community. My phone buzzed with updates from Detective Torres. Jack, facing his own charges, had finally agreed to a plea deal. His testimony had helped recover millions in hidden assets, funds that would go directly to victim restitution. The SEC task force wants to consult with us, Sarah reported, reviewing emails. They're using our case as a model for detecting romance-based financial fraud. Your documentation methods are becoming standard procedure. The Foundation's latest initiative was launching next week, a series of financial security workshops specifically designed for professional women. We'd already helped identify 3 other operations similar to Marcus's, leading to multiple arrests. Your 1 o'clock is here, Sarah reminded me. Another victim of a romance scam, referred by the FBI. Former victim, I corrected her. We don't let them stay victims. Back at my office, I reviewed the Foundation's latest statistics. Over 200 women helped in the past year, millions in stolen assets recovered, dozens of predators exposed and prosecuted. Marcus's attempt to destroy me had instead created a network of empowered survivors. Rachel's law firm had successfully argued for precedent-setting rulings in financial fraud cases. We're changing how these crimes are prosecuted, she explained. During our weekly meeting, making it harder for perpetrators to hide behind complex financial schemes. The final piece of Marcus's empire had crumbled that morning. His last appeal denied, his sentence confirmed. The man who'd built his life on exploiting trust would spend the next 2 decades facing the consequences of his choices. Remember this? Sarah asked, pulling up a photo from my almost wedding day. The white dress hung untouched in my closet, a reminder of bullets dodged and lessons learned. Keep it for the Foundation's archives, I decided, along with the credit report that started it all. As evening fell, I stood at my office window, watching the city lights flicker on. On my desk, a new stack of case files waited. More women seeking help, more predators to expose. Marcus had taught me an expensive lesson, but the return on that investment was beyond measure. My phone lit up with a message from Rachel. Dinner with the support group tonight? We're celebrating. I smiled, gathering my things. Marcus had counted on his victims staying isolated, ashamed, and silent. Instead, we'd built a community of strong, resilient women who turned their pain into purpose. Justice isn't just about punishment, I told the reporters earlier. It's about prevention, protection, and empowerment. Walking out of my office, I passed the Foundation's mission statement, now emblazoned on the wall. From victims to victors. Transforming financial fraud into female empowerment. Marcus had tried to add me to his list of victims. Instead, he'd created an army of advocates, each one dedicated to ensuring his kind could never succeed again.